Former USAID deep state provocateurs caught discussing an international coup against the Trump administration. And it was like a Zoom call, a video call where they were discussing this. And for people that don't believe the deep state exists, you're going to actually see part of that deep state and hear part of that deep state discuss hiding funds and stuff for their deep state for their deep state funding. It's so crazy hearing this out loud. So we're going to play the video and we're going to talk about it. But before we get started, go ahead and hit that like button. Share this out so we can get this information out there. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and hit that alarm bell so you know when I'm putting out new stuff. Also, check out my link tree in the description. There you'll find a link to my Patreon. That's where I'll talk about things that I can't talk about here. There's also a link to my Instagram and my X account, so follow me there as well. All right, so let's get into this news. Now, this comes from the Discern report, and they report that leaked audio from private calls among former USAID employees show a coordinated effort to rally international allies against the current U.S. administration. These individuals, many dismissed shortly after President Trump's inauguration in January, shifted their internal discussions to encrypted signal chats just before the transition. From there, they connected with foreign partners and non-governmental organizations to build what one participant called, quote, a global anti-authoritarian movement. Is this an attempted coup, treason, the deep state trying to retain control? All of the above. I believe all of the above. I believe that's what it is. I believe it's all of those things. But the people involved may claim it was a harmless exercise in venting against an administration that opposed their missions. But this certainly seems a lot bigger than that. The revelations come from an X thread by user Data Republican who shared clips from the recordings. In one segment, a speaker outlines plans to involve overseas experts. They said, quote, we don't have to be intermediaries either. We can bring in actors or colleagues from around the world that dealt with this directly, very specific issues, whether that's on tackling corruption or how to respond to corruption, mobilizing around corruption. We bring those folks in and kind of those facilitators. This builds on earlier reports of domestic organizing. In July 2025, Notice detailed how ex-USAID officials form groups like Democracy Aid, led by figures such as Tucci and Danielle Reef Tucci, once director of USAID's Center for Democracy, Human Rights and Governance, have conducted workshops on resistance tactics drawn from historical insurgencies. Reef started the initial signal group to keep the network alive after the firings. The recordings point to deeper ties. Participants mention coordination with Johns Hopkins University and spaces focused on international democracy and conflict mitigation. Another clip justifies the global approach. Quote, the authoritarians are already globally networked. The effort extends to a web of nonprofits and foundations, including links to Rockefeller Brothers funds, a fund, and Soros-backed entities like 5051 and Indivisible, which organized protests in February. So again, all of these things, they pretend like it's grassroots movements and stuff like this. These things are funded. The No Kings rally is all funded by these people, by these deep staters. One speaker frames the situation dramatically, quote, the foment of our current constitutional crisis is our opportunity to catalyze and synergize a dynamic change-making fractal ecosystems capable of co-generating the emergence of new base social, political, economic governance systems. Yet no such crisis exists. Trump's election and inauguration follow constitutional processes, and his team has complied with court rulings. These actions suggest an attempt to manufacture unrest rather than address real issues. That's true. Every single thing that the court hands down to Trump, he's done. He's listened to. So where's the authoritarianism? What are they talking about? The network scale is vast, with hundreds of NGOs involved in what appears to be a supranational push to reshape American institutions from the ground up. USAID's Office of Transition Initiatives, typically used for stabilizing foreign nations under crisis, get reference in calls, raising questions about misuse of expertise meant for abroad. This comes amid broader tensions, including the government shutdown, where Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and Democrats are holding out to extend their COVID-era temporary Obamacare subsidies. Such maneuvering behind the scenes erodes trust in institutions and invites foreign influence into domestic affairs. Like, it's ridiculous that they took Trump tariffs to court to try to fight Trump on his negotiation tactics. And it's crazy, like, these things are happening. We can't even put our country first, because whenever we do, we get sued for it. It's crazy. But with billions in funding from elite donors flowing through these channels, the goal seems clear: sideline populist voices and prevent another Trump-era shift. Voters choose stability and sovereignty in 2024. These holdouts appear determined to override that mandate through shadow networks. Awareness of these tactics is the first step in defending elected leadership. So let me just get right to the audio here. I wanted to just go through all of that because I want to play the audio, play the video uninterrupted. So here we go.
A quick recap of what is that timeline. So for the U.S. Agency for International Development, just to put it into scope and scale, it has been around for more than 60 years. It has had bipartisan support, strong bipartisan support. It has had earmarks in every budget. So this was a well-established agency of some 10 to 14,000 staff, $40 billion in procurement every year. We had all read Project 2025. We were somewhat prepared for this administration, and in other ways not prepared at all. So ahead of the inauguration, some groups, such as our Office of Transition Initiatives, which works specifically in countries and places that are transitioning from perhaps authoritarian governments, or wartime, into more peaceful and structured, hopefully democratic governments. OTI has been a major player, so they pre-organized because, as Danielle said, they had organized during the previous Trump administration to respond to threats to our U.S. democracy. Also terribly organized, that I'm proud about, is our Gender and Sexual Minorities Employee Resource Group. We are a cautious community and well prepared for, we saw the writing on the wall and the attacks that were already happening during the election cycle. And so we had already moved our group away from the USAID main systems into Signal chats.
I'm sorry. I said I was going to let it go uninterrupted, but I just can't help myself. I'm sorry. I can't help myself. What does someone's gender or sexuality have to do with running a government? Why do they think they're so special that they need to move off into a signal to talk about private stuff and authoritarianism and all this other bull crap? Like, this is why our government is so bad right now. Because of this stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with running the freaking government.
To protect our community there. January 20 happens. Inauguration. One of the 200 executive orders was to stop foreign assistance. So that was a 90-day pause on all funding. In addition to that, I think we're well aware of that there are other executive orders to stop DEI programming, which affected a large number of our awards immediately. So in that first week, We experienced a lot of threatening emails across the staff, a takeover of uh, what was it, DEIA Truth at opm.gov, which was unusual to have centralized emails sent to all government staff. And then many staff who are under a particular hiring mechanism in that first week were immediately put on furlough or laid off. I am a part of that hiring mechanism. Then within that, at the very beginning of, I think over the weekend of that first week, our senior staff, including our general counsel, were put on administrative leave. So we had decapitation of the agency leadership. But as I said, we were responding quickly, and immediately we had what's called the USAID Stop Work Order website and signal group was stood up. This was done by a longtime implementing partner who are a strategic communications specialist, and they went and moved immediately to start gathering people, creating community, and collecting information. This is also when some of the first lawsuits that I'll talk about will get started. Within that second weekend, there were more signal groups stood up. Like I said, this is an agency of about 10 to 14,000 people within the US. We have about 50,000 people who are hired into the ecosystem of awards and grants that are contracted by USAID. And so this community started really gathering in Signal. Especially as we saw the disinformation about USAID coming out of X as Elon Musk escalated attacks. In that second week after the administration, almost all of USAID staff was put on administrative leave, including our ethics lawyers, our HR, security. So this was really when Doge took over, closed our buildings. And that
Thank
February
God.
5th, we had our first large scale protest organized in which several congressional leaders stood up with us along with agency leadership. Many, many things have happened. I'll talk about that next, but we do.
So you get it there. They moved right before a lot of these people got fired and stuff. They moved over to the Signal app to continue their discussions on how they want to take out try to take out quote unquote authoritarian. They're talking about authoritarianism. They're talking about Donald Trump. This whole thing is crazy to actually see that they sat down and they talked about and had discussions and PowerPoints on all of this stuff is crazy. When this is what we're up against, folks. This is what we're up against. But y'all let me know what y'all think about this. Leave y'all comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe, and check out jjthepsychotherapist.com for the latest in news. Until next time, peace.